The days drifted by in a strange, quiet routine. Greg would leave early each morning saying he had to take care of work stuff and return in the evenings with groceries or small gifts. He'd bring me books he thought I'd like, try to cook meals he claimed were my favorites, and fill the house with flowers. It was sweet. But as the days wore on, I found myself growing uneasy. The house itself was beautiful, like something out of a magazine, but it felt too perfect, almost staged. There were no personal touches, no photos of us, no trinkets or mementos that would make it feel like home. I tried to ignore it, telling myself that Greg had just wanted everything to be neat and welcoming for when I came back. But the emptiness in my chest remained, gnawing at me whenever I walked through the quiet rooms. One evening, as I was unpacking some clothes Greg had bought for me, I came across a small drawer at the back of the closet. Inside, there was a single necklace, a delicate gold chain with a small round pendant. I held it up, letting the pendant catch the light, and felt a strange tug in my chest. Something about it felt familiar, like it belonged to me. I slipped it on, feeling the weight of it against my skin, and for a brief moment, I felt whole, like I'd found a tiny piece of myself. When Greg returned that evening, he noticed the necklace immediately. His expression softened, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of surprise, or maybe something darker, that I couldn't quite read.
You found it. I wasn't sure if you'd remember it.
He said softly, reaching out to touch the pendant. I smiled weakly, shrugging.
I don't really remember, but it feels like mine.
He nodded, his gaze lingering on the necklace before he turned away.
It was a gift, something I gave you a few years ago. You used to wear it all the time.
I wanted to ask more, to pry deeper into the story behind it, but something held me back. Greg's tone was warm, gentle, yet there was a strange edge to it, as if he were keeping something back. That night, as I lay in bed, I reached up and touched the pendant, trying to will myself to remember. But my mind remained a blank slate, refusing to offer me any clues. And why was it in that drawer if it were mine? Why had I quit wearing it? Over the next few days, Greg continued to be attentive, almost too attentive, as if he were trying to ensure that everything felt normal. He'd ask me how I was feeling, if I remembered anything, if there was anything I needed. But each time he asked, his gaze felt a little too intense, his smile a little too tight. One morning while he was out, I decided to explore the house more thoroughly. I felt guilty for snooping, but I needed to feel like I knew this place, like I understood the life I was supposed to have lived here. I started in the living room, carefully opening drawers and looking through shelves. Most of what I found was ordinary: magazines, coasters, some paperwork. But there were no personal letters, no handwritten notes, nothing that made it feel like a real home. In the office, I found a small filing cabinet with folders labeled bills, insurance, and medical. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the drawer labeled medical. I knew I shouldn't snoop, but I couldn't resist. If there was any information about my accident, maybe it would help me remember something. I pulled the folder out, flipping through the papers. Most of it was routine: appointments, prescriptions, instructions for follow-up care. But as I scanned the documents, one detail caught my eye: a list of surgeries. My jugular throbbed as I read through the list: skin grafts, bone reconstruction, scar revision. The terms were foreign and frightening, but one note stood out: patient history unavailable due to amnesia following traumatic brain injury. I swallowed hard, feeling a strange mixture of relief and fear. My memory loss was real, that much was certain. But the extent of the damage, the sheer number of surgeries, I hadn't realized it had been so severe. As I put the file back, a strange thought flickered in my mind. Why hadn't Greg mentioned just how extensive the surgeries had been? He told me about the accident in vague terms, about the explosion, but he downplayed the extent of my injuries. I told myself it was just him trying to protect me, to ease me back into things. But I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there was more he wasn't telling me. That evening, as we sat down to dinner, I couldn't stop myself from bringing it up.
Greg, I was looking through some of the medical papers and I saw the list of surgeries. I didn't realize it was so extensive.
I said, keeping my voice calm. He looked up, his expression briefly flickering with something I couldn't place, but then he gave me a reassuring smile.
I didn't want to overwhelm you. You've been through so much already. I thought it would be easier if I focused on helping you heal, rather than dwelling on the details.
I nodded, trying to accept his explanation.
I wish I could remember something, anything, even if it's just a small detail.
Greg reached across the table, taking my hand in his.
It'll come,
He said softly.
I'm sure of it. You just need time.
I forced a smile, trying to ignore the small knot of doubt forming in my stomach. Greg was so patient, so caring, but each day that passed without a single memory felt like an eternity, and each day I felt more like a stranger in my own skin. A few nights later, I woke in the middle of the night, unable to sleep. I got out of bed, padding down the dark hallway toward the kitchen, hoping a glass of water would help calm my restless mind. As I passed the living room, I noticed a faint glow coming from Greg's office. Curious, I moved closer, peeking inside. The door was open just a crack, and through the gap, I could see him sitting at his desk, his face illuminated by the light of his computer. He looked focused, almost intense, his eyes fixed on the screen. I was about to turn away when something caught my eye. An image on the screen, something that looked like me. I froze, peering closer, my heartbeat thumping my whole body. It was a photo of me, an old photo from before the accident. My face was softer, unmarked by scars, my expression carefree and happy. I watched as Greg clicked through more photos, each one showing a different version of me, laughing, smiling, looking at him with a warmth that felt foreign. He paused on one photo, his expression unreadable, almost wistful. I backed away, careful not to make a sound. I slipped back into bed, my mind racing with questions. Why was he looking at those photos so late at night? Why hadn't he shown them to me? Why did he keep them hidden? The questions replayed over and over in my mind, each one filling me with a strange sense of dread. Greg had been so kind, so patient, but in that moment, I felt like there was a whole side to him I didn't understand. A side he was keeping hidden, just like the photos. I lay awake for the rest of the night, staring up at the ceiling, wondering if the man I'd been putting all my trust in was someone I didn't really know at all.